Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. So as I move to shooting a lot of my work with black and white, one thing I haven't yet explored is using color filters. And I've been curious, which ones would fit my work, when would I want to use these, and what changes would they make with the film I use and the subjects that I shoot. So recently I bought a handful of different color filters that I thought would just suit the work that I do and the environments that I shoot in, and I spent the last couple of weeks testing them with the film that I use for most of my project work, which is Ilford HP5. So in this video, I just want to share the results. We're going to take a look at these images, talk a little bit about what I learned, and I hope this just gives you like an initial look into some of the changes that these filters can make. So I bought 4 different color filters for this test. The first one was this Red 25 by Tiffin. And red filters are probably one of the more common for black and white photography. They're also probably one of the most dramatic. You know, these often will increase contrast quite a bit, darken blue skies considerably. So this was one that I was probably least interested in, just because I'm looking for more like subtle changes, but I decided to pick one up just out of curiosity's sake and to test it out since this is so popular. Next up is a yellow 12 by Tiffin. And I believe this is considered like a medium yellow. Obviously with a lot of these filters, you can get different densities. So lighter and darker, stronger and lighter effects. But similar to the red, you know, this will give a contrast boost, can darken skies as well, but not as extreme. And I know that these are often popular as like a general all around contrast enhancing filter. And then next up is this yellow green by Hoya. So similar to the yellow, obviously just a little bit of a shift. Same thing, foliage, skin tones. Don't think these affect contrast as much, but this was maybe the filter that I was most curious about just for the environments that I shoot in. And then the last one is a green filter by Hoya. This is a green X1, similar to the yellow green, you know, green grass, leaves on trees can help lighten those. And I do know that people will use these for portraits at times as well. So kind of like a common theme running between 3 of these filters. For the work that I'm doing up in North Wales, specifically the landscapes that I'm capturing, a lot of the times I'm dealing with like green grass, kind of yellowish grass, slate, stone, trees, and in black and white, a lot of those things end up kind of being the same tone and it blends together. So, you know, exploring these different yellow and green filters, hoping that these can, you know, pop some of those and bring some separation to the images. And then the second thing is for environmental portraits, which I want to incorporate in this project. Just seeing how these filters affect skin tones for portraits and if I enjoy that look and maybe having like a go-to to use moving forward if I like how it looks. And then the last thing, not as important, but just curious to see how some of these work in terms of like contrast enhancing. Just again, after like subtleties, nothing too strong, but seeing if I enjoy the look of any of these combined with HP5, and then I can use them in certain situations if I want like a little something extra. Okay, and then really quickly, before we look at the images, it's just worth talking about how these filters work. I'll put some links below to some articles that go in depth. If you have no idea, just like a really initial simple way to look at this is when you choose a color filter, whichever color you choose, so say in this situation, green, anything in your scene that is green is going to appear much lighter in the black and white image. And then anything that's the contrasting color of this, so in this situation, red, is going to appear much darker. So say green grass will be lighter, maybe like the bark of a tree is going to appear darker. Or if you choose a yellow or yellow-green filter, you know, skin tones are going to pop a little bit, and then the contrasting color, say blue skies, is going to appear darker. So there's more to it than this, but that's like a really simple initial way to look at it if you have no idea about how these work. Okay, so let's jump into the tests. First, we're going to look at some self-portraits that I shot. So even just this first test surprised me quite a bit. Up first, we have the image with no filter. And then even jumping to just the yellow filter, you can see the image feels a bit more balanced. Skin pops a little bit. The grass is a bit lighter. So this is really nice. Subtle, but nice. And then jumping to the yellow-green, it kind of builds off that. Grass is even lighter. Less definition in the clouds, but this one looks good as well. And then jumping to the green, it kind of builds on that even more. And I actually quite like how this looks. So interesting to see that all three filters had a pretty nice impact. So I would definitely not hesitate to use any of these. And then did another one of these self-portrait tests on another shoot day, and kind of more of the same with this one. So we have no filter image here. And then we jump to the yellow, better balanced like we saw before, but interesting to see the sweater gets a lot more kind of rich, the blacks do. A little more contrast in this image, so I like how that looks. And then jumping to the yellow-green, again, losing a little bit of definition in the sky, but still kind of building off of the other characteristics that the yellow had. And then same with the green as well. And then just for fun, threw on the red filter. You can see it's a lot more contrasty, especially in the grass, the green grass, but not one I would use for portraits. Skin does not look good. So really cool to see these results. And if I had to pick a favorite, it would probably be this yellow-green. I just think it was a nice middle ground. You know, I enjoyed yellow and I enjoyed green quite a bit as well. I'd actually see myself using all three of those moving forward, depending on the situation, but I think this was my favorite out of the bunch. But all three did a great job, you know, just helping kind of balance out the image a little bit. So good start to this test, and really glad that I did this, and I could see myself using these quite often in the future for portrait work. Back to the video in a second, just have to quickly talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Squarespace. One of the things on my to-do list this year is to give my website a bit of a refresh and an update, and Squarespace is a really great tool to do just that. They have a wide range of nice, clean, professional-looking templates to choose from, and then I just love the simplicity of it all. So, for example, I'm currently putting together a gallery of some of my recent work from Wales, and just being able to click on images and drag to rearrange and reorder is really great when you're building out sequences. You can also add things like an online shop if you want to sell prints, zines, or photo books, and things like that. So check out squarespace.com today for your free trial, and when you're ready to launch, you can use my link below to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Okay, so next up, we'll jump into looking at some portrait work, and this is one that I was really interested in, as mentioned, just to see if these could help separate things a little bit. So the first scene I did was here close to home, just this landscape with this church in the background, you know, dominated by a lot of green grass, and then the church itself with some stone. There's trees in the foreground. So a situation where things can easily get lost in terms of being similar tone to one another. So first up, we have no filter, and then next up, jumping to the yellow. And even with this one, you know, the changes are subtle, but it's exactly what I was after. So you can see in the stones on the church, they're quite a bit darker. Some of the bark on the tree, the grass is a little bit lighter, and even like the foliage, the leaves on the trees lightens up a bit. So changes are, you know, subtle, but definitely bring some of that separation that I was looking for. Jumping to the yellow-green, very, very similar to the yellow, maybe not as dark in the stones of the church. And then same with the green filter as well. Grass is even a little bit lighter. And then just for fun, threw on the red. By far the most contrasty. The green grass goes really dark. So jumping to another nearby scene, you know, this is dominated almost purely by green. And first up we have no filter. And then jumping to yellow again, so grass is a little bit lighter, a little bit more definition in those clouds as well. Touch more contrast in the bark on the tree. And then jumping next to green, I forgot to do a yellow-green with this scene, but in this one the grass is substantially lighter, and not a huge fan of how this looks. It's a little bit too much. And then jumping to the red, and again, just, you know, pretty contrasty, not really a look that I'm going for. So what's become quickly apparent from this initial test is that these filters for the work that I do are often going to produce pretty subtle results, which is what I'm after, and It's what I kind of expected. Just, you know, the environments I photograph and subjects I photograph usually aren't that colorful. So this is really all going to depend, you know, if you shoot in cities or towns or there's big, bright, bold objects, color filters can have quite a drastic effect. But that's why it's so important to just get out there, do these tests, get a feel for how it's going to affect your work. All right, so some final thoughts, you know, after this initial test. I would say my favorites are the yellow and the yellow-green, but out of them all, it's this one, this yellow-green filter. I really like what this did with skin tones for portraits. I like how it still adds a little bit of contrast. It works well for foliage as well. So kind of just a nice all-around filter. And what sells it for me over, say, the yellow, obviously with these color filters, they affect your exposure because they're all different densities. So you have to adjust your exposure accordingly. With something like the yellow, this is 1 stop, so you have to increase by 1 stop. I think green is 2 and red is 3. But what's really nice with this yellow-green is this is a 1/4 stop adjustment, so almost nothing. You could basically leave your exposure if you wanted. So for that reason alone, you know, using this over something like the yellow, just leaving this on your lens and using it almost as like a general all-purpose filter. You know, it's pretty subtle, but in certain situations, it does have a really nice effect on specific parts of the image. Okay, so overall, just a really fun test to do. I hope this gives you like a little bit of an insight into what color filters can do. And what I would suggest, like I said earlier, you know, if you're interested in working with these, if you haven't before, take the time, do some tests with the film you shoot with in the environments that you usually work in, because those things are going to obviously impact which ones work best for you or which changes these have. So testing, always such an important thing you can do. You know, if you're not inspired to make work at a certain time, you can't go wrong just going out and trying to understand your process a little bit better. So love doing this stuff. I'm glad I took the time to do it, and would also love to hear from you. You know, if you have some favorite color filters that you shoot with HP5 or with different films, what works for you. I think for me moving forward, you know, definitely happy with these 3. Probably won't use red much, and might try out an orange. That's one more filter that I didn't pick up that I'd like to explore as well. But cool to test these and see what they do. So happy with these results. Hope you enjoyed this, and just want to say thanks for watching. See you next week.